you're probably here because you have a feeling that you've been in a limerence state, so you've had a romantic obsession about someone that is never going to actually eventuate in anything, and you're either currently in that situation or you've recently been in that situation and you want to avoid that happening again, and you want to break free of that pattern. You've noticed maybe that you've done it once for too long, or that you've done it multiple times. And so this video, I'm going to show you how you can actually break free of having these strong kind of feelings towards people that are never going to eventuate in real relationships, and how to move forward in a healthier way. So there's 3 main steps to overcoming limerence. And the first one is to recognize that it's far easier to see it in other people than it is to see it in ourselves. So the first step is really to start to spot that pattern when other people are talking about their kind of intense crushes. So if we were teenagers, we'd talk about it as a crush, and everyone would normalize and say that's perfectly normal to, see someone in your maths class walking past and just think, wow, that person is special. I feel something special between them and I through when he looks at me. So if we were younger, we would think this was normal. We call it limerence when we're an adult because it tends to become a romantic obsession that lasts longer than a healthier period of time of just feeling like, oh, I see that person and I like them and I might want to pursue something with them. So this limerence is really a description for what happens when you sort of stay in that first period of engagement with someone. It doesn't actually progress much further. You might get to the point that you're having sort of casual conversations. Usually they stay though at like an acquaintance level. They don't even really make it to an inner circle of what you consider kind of a friend that you catch up with regularly. They're often someone just sort of in your circle. So someone you might see at events or at work, or might be a friend of a friend. So you see them enough that it triggers that feeling, that intense kind of emotional, sort of physiological feeling in your body. For me, when I had an experience of limerence that lasted for kind of 1 to 2 years, I actually felt like that this man, this young guy, was like a lighthouse. Like he just felt like he glowed and stood out from everyone else. I could sort of sense him in the crowd. He would just I could spot him anywhere he was. And so when I caught his eyes, when we had kind of a moment of brief connection, I would just feel like this rush of excitement, of energy, of that kind of romantic connection, chemistry you see in the movies. And so it's very intoxicating. So you've got to remember that when you're feeling this intense flood of chemicals in your body, you're not actually making clear decisions, and you're not actually even seeing this person clearly. So they might have major flaws or reasons why they're not suitable for you or not available, but because the intense feeling kind of overrides your sort of rational decision-making centers in your brain, you're not going to pick up on those things. So that's why you have to be really compassionate when you look at yourself now and go, it's embarrassing. That cringe factor. Why was I obsessing over someone that was never going to be interested, or maybe already had a girlfriend or a partner, or just in some way just was totally unsuitable for you? So it's really important to let go of the shame. If you're someone observing, you'll see it clearly, but when you're in it, you're not going to see it. And I had my own experience of this, where a few years after my limerence experience, I was with a friend and she had to show me this guy. We're at this festival and she took me through the crowd and she spotted this guy, like, see that guy? He was a musician, he was up on the stage, and she was like convinced that this was her man. And she didn't wave, she didn't go and talk to him. And that was a bit of a sign. So really she had this kind of acquaintance level interaction with him. She knew he was seeing someone else, but like that wasn't enough to convince her that it wasn't going to happen. And I looked at her face and she was like lit up just talking about this guy. Clearly it was making her feel amazing. And it's so natural that we don't want to let that go. So it's really important to have compassion and patience with ourselves when we're going through this process. In hindsight, we might be embarrassed, but that's because we're not currently flooded with those feelings. Something's happened to pull us out of that limerence state. Maybe we asked them out, maybe we, found out they were married, or something happened that snapped us out. And all of a sudden we weren't getting fed from those interactions anymore. And it's only then that when we have that connection has been broken somehow, that we can become more logical and rational and clear thinking. So there's no point feeling embarrassed about the past. All you really should be focused on now is understanding why you were attracting this pattern, why you were feeling so amazing based on someone that you hardly knew, and how to break free, how to make sure that you don't keep repeating that pattern with the next person and the next person. Because I imagine, like me, you like me would have that desire to actually have a real, genuine, loving relationship with someone. And so that totally is possible. But the first thing you need to do is, as I said, release yourself from the shame. You were too involved in it, you couldn't see it clearly. The second thing you need to do is to understand that it serves a purpose. Limerence is actually just a coping mechanism. So you could have been drinking, 5 glasses of wine at night, but you weren't. You were obsessing over someone that wasn't available. So it's just the way the brain copes with stress and not getting its needs met. Limerence is just a coping strategy. Like someone else might reach for a bag of donuts or a couple of glasses of wine every night. It's just a way to avoid negative feelings, avoid stress, and to feel better when you're not feeling so great. So for me, there were 2 reasons why I was stuck in this kind of romantic obsession with this guy. So the first one was that I had a lack of connection in my life at the time, and you might relate to this too. So I had friendships, but they were all reasonably superficial. I had moved to another country, and so I didn't have those kind of long-term friends that I could really open up to and have that deep kind of connection with. And I'd just come out of, my marriage had just ended. So I'd kind of lost my best friend. And so I didn't have anyone really close in my life. So there was a desire for connection there. And I can see now in hindsight how having someone that I felt was almost like my long lost soulmate gave me that sense of I'm not alone. And I could actually feel this sense of like this visceral sense of connection when I caught his eye. It just felt amazing. It was almost like it made up for all the areas of my life where I didn't feel connection. And it made me feel, I guess, less lonely. So it's really important to understand that desire for connection is such a normal, healthy human thing. It's just when you can't find it in your real life, or you feel like you can't find it in your real life, then it's like the imagination takes over and creates this fantasy of this imaginary person you have this connection with. So it's all very normal and human, and it's just a coping mechanism for really what's kind of intense emotional loneliness. And the second thing which limerence can be a coping mechanism for, and this was also the case with me, is to avoid stress. So I kind of think about it in your life. Is there parts of your life that are not to do with relationships that you're finding very challenging? Do you have a difficult situation in your family life? Is there a health diagnosis that's troubling you? Is work being particularly challenging at the moment? So because the limerence makes us feel wonderful, it's like downing, like a bucket of ice cream all at once of your favorite flavor. It's like, what are you avoiding not feeling? What other areas of your life actually aren't going very well that you'd sort of rather that having this sort of nice, pleasant, sweet distraction from? And the fact that it's in this fantasy mode, that it's actually not a real relationship, helps keep it being perfect, because a real relationship would never be that perfect. It would never make you feel good all the time. You would have arguments, have misunderstandings. So allowing it to be with someone that's unavailable, that you can never really be with, keeps it idealized and perfect. So the third step is to actually create some healthy coping strategies for dealing with stress and for dealing with loneliness. So one thing I found really useful is to focus on, what do I want to change in my life? For me, I had a work situation. I wasn't happy in my career. And so just journaling about what I'd really like to create for myself work-wise, what is my dream job? What would I really love to do? Focusing on how you can improve areas of your life that aren't going well, it just means you don't have another reason to distract yourself. And the second thing I did that can be really helpful is to enhance connections with other people in your life. So where are your existing friendships maybe a little bit superficial, but you knew if you reached out to someone and wanted to catch up more regularly, that they would be open to that. Or maybe you meet someone at a hobby group or workshop or something that you think, well, I might ask this person out for coffee. So there are many opportunities to get different forms of connection in our life. They don't all have to be romantic. And it's amazing how when I strengthen my friendship connections, that strong desire for a romantic connection did diminish over time. The other thing I did that was actually really important was to actually increase connection with myself. And the best thing I ever did on that was to get involved in more creative projects. So I took a photography class, I took up some writing classes, and you can get that same sort of rush that you get from a romantic connection, you can get from just being in the creative flow with the project. So there are lots of different ways to feel better and reduce stress that don't involve limerence. And so it's just about identifying why that you've got into this cycle of kind of idealizing or fantasizing someone, and what else can you do that's healthier, that's going to kind of meet those needs in a more fulfilling way and in a more sustainable way that also keeps the door open for a real relationship to come in, which is really what that desire is underneath the limerence pattern. So when I look back on this romantic obsession I had with this guy, am I embarrassed? Not anymore. I was. I don't feel any shame about it now. I feel like it was quite a normal reaction to the amount of loss I'd experienced when my marriage had ended and the lack of connection I had in my life because I was living in a different country and away from friends and family. So do I think it was harmful? No, I actually think as a coping mechanism, it was probably one of the least harmful things I could do. It didn't go on excessively. I still actually dated and had kind of real relationships during that time, so it didn't stop me from meeting anyone. And I feel like it was just a period of time when I needed that pattern, and it's not something that I need in my life anymore. And I did find a real relationship, and I got married again, and I got that kind of deeper connection that I was after. And I don't think this obsession years ago with that guy actually really damaged my prospects for happiness in any way. So I guess, so I wanted to end on that note to say, actually, in the big picture of your life, it's not going to really be a big deal. And maybe it was actually protecting you from a more unhealthy coping mechanism that you could have latched onto. So really, it's just about letting go of the shame, letting go of the story, understanding yourself more, and just finding healthier ways to cope moving forward.